coming out is an ongoing process. Like it's like every time you meet someone new, it's like you have to establish that it is how it feels.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Campfire Bandy, a podcast where I will absolutely not be calling you campers or saying howdy, because as we found out last week, that sounds absolutely ridiculous on camera. I'm Grayson Black. We're going to talk real stories with real people. I'm very excited today to have my good friend, David Johnson, on the podcast. He and I go back a very long way. I think we started our friendship at Tennessee Wesleyan College, probably spent the most time together in French with good old Cole Duncan, who will eventually be on the pod. But we went on to probably grow our friendship even more in the trenches of Kmart.
In its heyday.
Not to get too ahead of ourselves, but there's a Kmart here, and I think I made that clear to everyone that I like full on shit my pants and had like an existential crisis when I was driving down the road and saw a Kmart here. So anyways, David, I'm so excited to have you on and to have a conversation with you. How are you doing?
It's going great. Yeah. I'm excited, a little nervous. I've never done anything like this before, so.
Well, I can tell you that I match that nervousness every single time I do that intro, and I'm really not sure if it's good or not yet. So,
or if it will go away.
Yeah, or if the nervousness will go away. Last time I decided that I was going to say, howdy campers, welcome back to the fire pit. Welcome back to the pit. And it was like, there was so much wrong with that. I said howdy, and it sounded stupid. I said campers, and nobody wants to be called that. And I said welcome back to the pit, and it sounds like we're fucking
about to duke it out.
Deduce your own, whatever that sounds like. So, anyways, it's great to have you on. We're going to talk to you about your life, your story, your goals, all that stuff. And I always think it's good to start by kind of giving us 3 ways or phrases that you would use to describe yourself, just to kind of right up front give us a good idea of how you see yourself and who you are.
Well, I feel like I'm being tested because I filled out your form, but I don't remember what I put on there. So.
Well, do what comes to mind, because maybe you felt a little bit of pressure from the form. Maybe this will be more off the cuff.
So 3 things to describe myself. Well, nerd. Big nerd, always have been, always will be.
Not on the form.
Yeah.
See?
Gay.
Not on the form.
Very gay. So again.
I'm getting a lot of feedback on how successful my form is right now.
Hey, listen, I did that several days ago. I've slept since then. Yes. I'm a different person now. Just fun loving, I like to try and, just make the most of every situation. I like to make people happy and laugh. So,
hell yeah.
I think that one was on there. Something.
It was. Okay, so happy, fun loving, and not judgmental. Those are all very good reflections of yourself. But nerd, gay, and fun loving, we got to get fun loving in there, is also good. So, tell us about one of those. Walk us through whichever one of those you feel like captures your identity the most or stands out the most to you.
And it kind of, it varies from day to day, but the most all-encompassing is probably fun-loving. Like I said, I love to make people laugh, and it comes from a place of, I know how it feels to not feel good about yourself. So if I can room it anytime, I'm going to try to do that. I want to try and make people happy and forget about, the pressures of the world. I'm by no means a comedian. I just like to cut up.
I don't know about
keep things light.
thinking back to some parties at 1609, you were usually the one making everyone laugh. There was alcohol involved, but there usually is.
Yeah, well, and usually it's so funny. I have so many people come up to me and be like, "Hey, remember when you said this really funny thing?" And I'm like, "Not really."
They just fly off the cuff.
Yeah, and I've kind of learned to tune myself out. So,
Well, I think most people try to tune in when you're around because you really do. Like, you bring a positive energy, I think, whether you realize it or not. And I mean, I remember that being true in French class, absolutely being true in Kmart. I think, Nathan, who's already been on the podcast, also worked with you. And it was always going to be an exciting night when David Johnson was going to be on shift. That we both got excited about that.
I'm honored and flattered.
So, I'm kind of changing up the format for the first of the podcast just so we can make sure we get to know you now, or the guest now, better before we get into kind of your life story. So I want to touch on, and especially since you said that you are a nerd, can you touch on like just 3 things that you nerd out on that get you excited?
Ooh. Oh, well, number one is Lady freaking Gaga, Stephanie Germanotta. It doesn't
Oh,
matter.
he knows their name.
Oh, Stefania Angelina Joanna Germanotta is her full name. She's Italian. Yeah, anytime, it doesn't matter like what's going on in my life. If she's doing something, like she's releasing new music or she's working on a new project, I'm tuned in. I know about it. Like I used to joke and say I'm the one person in the world who knows more about Lady Gaga than Lady Gaga.
Probably true on a day-to-day, minute-by-minute basis.
But yeah, she is definitely number one. Just like I said, it doesn't matter what's going on in my life. I was going through a pretty bad breakup last year, and she came out with Rain on Me with Ariana Grande, and I was just like, I don't care, the world could end, doesn't matter. Like,
absolutely. Yeah, and I just put in our group chat the other day, like, there is nothing better than hearing the right music at the right time. And it doesn't, that's completely a personal and a subjective thing, but it can just completely change your mood. So,
oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, she would be number one. Oh
absolutely
yeah,
number one.
Number two, like drag queens, love anything to do with. Of course, RuPaul's Drag Race is like the biggest, I guess, social. It's the easiest thing to consume anything to do with drag queens. But and I know it's hard to go to bars now and stuff with COVID and everything, but I love going to local bars and supporting the local queens. It's something I don't get to do too often because I live pretty far away from the closest ones, like an hour away. So, but anytime that I get that chance, I want to be there. It's such a interesting art form to me. It's just something that I just look at and I'm just like in awe,
So yeah, it's like, it's meaningful to you both like as a TV show, because a lot of people I'm sure think of the RuPaul's Drag Race, but also as like going in person is just as special.
Yeah, absolutely. If not even more so, because you're right there with them, and TV has a certain, not necessarily like disconnect, but kind of, there's a section, one of my favorite books is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, and she talks about how, to a certain degree, like seeing Mount Rushmore on TV, you've got like the camera angles and you've got the perfect weather and this and that, and then you go and see it in person, it's like, it's great, it's cool, but nothing's ever really going to compare to that. But I kind of think the opposite. Like, I want to be able to be in the same space as those things.
Yeah, I agree. Brianna and I talked last week about driving California's Highway 1 for the first time and seeing the coast. And it's like, you can find 8 billion videos on YouTube of that. But to know that you are there is a completely different experience. And yeah. I've been to a drag show in Asheville, North Carolina on New Year's, and it was the funnest experience that I may have ever had. And everybody is having fun and everybody is
Yes.
so positive and so excited and cheering, the performers on. And it was just such an awesome experience. So cool.
Yeah. It's not, and for everyone watching, it's not just for one type of person. Anyone can enjoy a drag show.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's just exciting and fun. And as long as you come there ready to have a good time and not be a dick, then you're gonna have a good time. Like, it's gonna be funny, and it's gonna be entertaining.
And if you have a godly beard like Grayson, you're probably gonna get at least one free drink.
I didn't, so I need to call a few people.
Yeah, my people will talk to your people.
To be fair, this was pre-COVID, and there was like 10 million people there.
Yeah, true.
What's number 3? What's your third? Something you nerd out on.
Video games. Huge into video games, especially RPGs. I had recently, semi-recently, like 2 or 3 years ago, I guess, gotten super heavy into the Soulsborne Ekiro series, whatever you want to call it.
I remember. Oh,
yeah. Still kind of am. Every once in a while, I'll rabbit hole and end up watching like 3 hours of like explanation videos, It's, but yeah, it's especially anything like that. But, anything that kind of takes you out of reality for a little bit and has that fantasy aspect, super, super into that. My first ever, I had video games growing up, but my first ever, I remember thinking to myself as a child when I plopped in Kingdom Hearts and Utada Hikaru's Simple and Clean started playing. I remember thinking to myself, this is going to be a problem for the rest of my life.
And here we are. I remember for a while, you would get in the group chat and you and Wilco would just go for like an hour talking about Dark Souls strategy. You would come over and the first thing you would say was, I just got done playing a fucking level on Dark Soul, Will. I don't know how you beat that goddamn boss or something like that. Like it was so infuriating, but you were like in it. And I think Dark Souls, I've never played Dark Souls, but I can tell that it demands that because it is arguably not, you're not playing it for relaxation most of the time. It's challenging.
Yeah, nah. Yes. None of it's relaxing. None.
From start to finish, it's an actual chore.
I swear, and I probably shouldn't admit this on camera. When I played Sekiro for the first time, it is now like probably not my number one favorite game, but I think I broke 3 controllers.
Oh my god. Okay, well, how did you break them?
Oh my god. Any way I could. I literally twisted one. I twisted one until it snapped.
Yes. God.
I was like, because, and this is so ridiculous, but it was almost like, I have to break this or I'm going to keep playing.
I have to cut myself off, and the only way to do that is to bash this into my forehead until it's unusable.
Yeah, pretty much.
So let's go ahead and get into a little bit about your life. And I want this to go at whatever pace you choose for it to go at. And this part of the conversation should feel like a conversation, not like me questioning you or anything like that. So you mentioned in the Google form that you grew up in a religious household, and I assume that's a big part of your childhood. So could you start in your childhood and just tell us like how you grew up, what that was like, and where you grew up and what that culture was like?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, when I was probably 1 or 2, I don't remember it, but my dad had accepted a pastor position at Mount Harmony Baptist Church in Tellico Plains, Tennessee. So for up until I was in college, he was a pastor. And when I was in college, I think I was a sophomore, he had resigned his pastor title and moved to Chattanooga, but was still an assistant pastor down there. He had to relocate because of his job. growing up in Tellico as a little gay kid, it had its moments where it was difficult, but like, I don't remember high school being so terrible. Like, I guess because I kind of cling on to trying to be that likable, funny person. Like, I had friends in every single friend group, you know? So it's not like I was bullied to death. I mean, some people are, and that's awful. And I wish there was more we could do to stop things like that. But for me, that really wasn't the experience. I think it also helped having an older brother. So when I was a freshman, my brother was a senior, and he's a big old teddy bear, you know, like but at the same time, like, emphasis on the bear, you know what I mean? Like, he's not afraid to puddle stomp someone who's threatening his family or something. So he's always kind of looked out for me, and I'm super appreciative of him. So like my freshman year was kind of like a breeze because I had him, and like pretty much everybody knew who he was. You know, no one wanted to mess with him.
What's the age gap there?
3.5 years.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that was great. And he was actually like the second or third person that I ever came out to. And he's always been so supportive. I couldn't be more grateful. But I do remember a quick aside, just because it's funny. This story's funny to me. But I remember we were out on our porch at our family home in Tellico, and I was like, Dane, I have to tell you something. He was like, I think I said, can I tell you anything? And he was like, yeah. As long as you're not gay. And I was like, and he was like, oh, I'm kidding. He immediately, you know, he was like, oh, I didn't mean that. Are you? And I was like, I think so, you know, because I was still kind of trying to come to terms with everything, you know. But yeah, he's always been super supportive. So that's always helpful, because there were some pretty dark times that we had gone through with my family, but I've never thought that I wouldn't have his support.
That's awesome.
And to this day, I still consider myself to be a Christian. I believe in the message of Christ. Sometimes I struggle with how other Christians present themselves, and it makes me question, you know, my own religion to an extent. So, you know, it's always a work in progress, but as of now, that's still how I believe. I still consider myself to be religious.
Do you go to church? Do you claim a denomination or anything like that?
I do not. The one that I was considering joining was Liv's Church, and I can't think of the denomination right now, but it's the only one in my local area that I can think of that I would probably be most comfortable in.
Is it Episcopalian?
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm. And she's pretty high up in there, and she does a lot with the community, so I know it would be fantastic to join and be a part of that. It's just not, you know, the first step's always the hardest. And also, I still am trying to figure out my own self. So, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty meaningful, I have to say, that you still consider yourself a Christian, because it's not necessarily that Christianity is outright like in conflict with the gay community, but I think that a lot of people weaponize it in that way, you know. So It clearly must have meant a lot to you growing up, and that must be a big part of who you are too.
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to, I should have drawn a diagram, but it's like a triangle. Yeah. So you've got gay, Southern, and Christian. And like, most people don't meet all three criteria, so they fall into a subcategory. Because if you're gay and Southern, you're just a Dolly Parton fan. You know what I mean?
That's awesome. That's my next get for the pod, is Dolly Parton. So it's a high goal, but everybody, you know, I'm crowdsourcing right now. If we say Dolly Parton enough times in this podcast, maybe the algorithms will pick up on it and it'll get on her radar. So
yes, very nice.
So before we move on from your childhood, what was the process like of coming out and figuring that out? Because that's such a huge part, not only of yours, but of anyone's identity, their sexuality, regardless of what it is. What was that like? And I mean, you know, it's impossible to avoid the fact that you were figuring that out in the South, where you were probably pretty aware that it wasn't just going to be embraced with open arms, unfortunately. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and part of the struggle with all of that and growing up in churches, like, with my dad being a pastor, we had to be like any local churches that were having what they call a revival in the South. So that's just where you go to church, not only on Sunday, but every single day of the week. So if one of our sister churches or whatever was having a revival, we were there. Anytime there was a gathering, we were there. We had to. And so it was so much exposure, and no one that I can remember ever just came out and said, I hate homosexuals. It was a much more subtle kind of hatred, but it was still hatred. I remember and I can't think of his name. I think it's Bill Kidd, maybe, is an evangelical. And I remember one of my dad's good friends, who was also a preacher, was laughing while listening to him as he said, I cannot wait for God to send all the gays to burn like a sausage in the lake of fire. Like, God. It was something, and like,
just
I was
gross.
Like, yeah. And I was like 10, and I was just like, like no one ever came out and said, hey, you're going to hell for this. But it was like, I internalized that.
Yeah, it's like, it's implied. And I mean, I think I said this on Scott's podcast. The South is very good at being subtly racist, homophobic, misogynistic. Like, Southern charm is very much like a film that sits on the top of Southern culture. And those things just kind of like poke at it, but they rarely break all the way through. But if you live in the South, especially if you're a part of one of those groups,
Yeah, absolutely. And it was all those little things. And I don't know if I've told you this story, but this is kind of my go-to story when people ask me about growing up in the South and being gay, and having a dad for a pastor nonetheless. But I remember being like 11 or 12 years old, and I was just on my hands and knees in my bedroom floor, begging for God to take my feelings away from me, my attraction to men, because at that point I knew that that's what it was. And I explicitly remember saying, if you won't take this away from me, at least kill me before my parents find out. Jeez. Like, I never wanted to hurt myself, but that was a huge struggle, and still kind of is to a degree. But,
so there was clearly some fear there of what would happen, and that's like, this is the case for so many people, I'm sure, but it's like the fear of what will happen when you come out as your true self, and all the time that's keeping you from being your true self, which causes so many day-to-day internal conflicts just as it is.
Yeah. There's I don't know if you know who Freckle is. She's in like
I don't think so.
She's in I can't remember the full name, but it's like a YouTube series, but she's like incredibly smart. She was like, the problem with, people in the LGBTQ plus community is that we don't really get to be teenagers. We don't get to have like that childhood experience, because we're busy trying to hide everything, and we don't get to really be ourselves until we're 20. And so it's like, when you're in your 20s, it's like you're trying to figure out how to date. Like, I'm awful at dating. You can ask anyone. But it's because it's like, I still don't know how. And it's like, a lot of people in the gay community in the South probably feel the same way. They never got to fully experience everything as a child. And like, I did not have a bad childhood. Like, my parents did great by me. And it wasn't until I did come out that we could finally like deal with it. But it was such a struggle trying to, because I knew that it was almost like I wanted to keep the status quo. I wanted to keep everything. I didn't want to upset anyone. I didn't want to rock the boat, so I was like, whatever, I'll just keep this to myself almost.
Yeah. Well, and it's almost like, you probably would have felt more comfortable if it didn't mean that the spotlight was all of a sudden going to be on you in this thing, because most people just get to, live their lives and not be scrutinized for who they are. But I'm sure, just in general, but especially in the South, and especially with your family being so religious, you knew that when that happened, it was no longer going to be David is seen through the lens of this happy-go-lucky kid that's living his life and he's a good Christian. Now everybody is looking at you through the lens of David is a gay person first, and we have to figure out how we feel about that before we figure out how to treat him.
Yeah.
And it's so sad, but it's like when the system is not set up for you, that's the way that people process it.
Yeah. It's like I hold a man's hand and it's a political statement. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
exactly. Yeah, and I mean,
it's like, no, this is just the person that I'm dating. Like,
exactly, and it's like it truly shows you that the system is not set up for that. Especially talking about how you never get to be a teenager and you don't know how to date. You know, anything that we, at least you and I'm sure, learned about dating and how to ask somebody out or whatever. If you're a guy, you're getting taught how to ask a girl out. You know, there is just there's not any kid stories, there's not any instruction, there's not any TV shows about how to do this, because society as it stands now, and especially Southern culture, makes that an other, you know?
Yeah. And that's another thing, is like the hypersexualization of gay people, especially, well, I won't say especially gay men, because it happens to gay women too, but like just in general, the hypersexualization is like, you can't show a gay couple on TV because that's obscene all of a sudden, even though they're not doing anything. Like,
exactly,
you know, oh, that's not appropriate for children, but let me put my boy in a onesie when he's, you know, 3 months old that says ladies man. What's the difference, you know?
Yeah, there really isn't one,
right?
You know, and you're right. Anytime a gay couple shows up on screen, or even if somebody just alludes to the fact that they identify in that way, it becomes a sexualization. It's you trying to make this political statement, or it's bringing up something that isn't necessary, but yet for two 12-year-olds in 7th grade, a boy and a girl to be dating is somehow not doing that same thing, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned, you know, you're speaking as a gay man, and maybe it's different for gay women. What do you think the difference in perception is right now? I know we're getting off track a little bit, but I almost feel like in larger culture, and especially in Southern culture, gay men are still looked at as weak or other or like sinful, but yet gay women are fetishized, you know?
Yeah.
And it's almost like this double standard, because for a straight white man, it's, you know, you can fetishize this thing, but this thing still makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wouldn't want to speak too much on the experiences of gay women, just because, you know, I can't even imagine. Like, that's its own entirely different type of struggle, and I can't imagine like being fetishized my entire life. Like, I truly don't know which is worse, because I've only ever experienced one side of it. But yeah, it's not that it makes it okay to people. Like, they still think of it as sinful, you know, but it's like, oh, we can kind of turn a blind eye to that, you know, for whatever reason, or maybe not even turn a blind eye because they want to watch and it's disgusting.
Yeah, it really is disgusting. Yeah, and I also want to say, you know, you mentioned not wanting to speak for gay women. I remember one time when we were working at Kmart, and I was a little bit less aware than I am these days. I remember coming up to you and being like, David, I watched this awesome show last night. Like, you really need to check it out. The main character is super cool. I think you'd really be into him. And you said, is he gay? And I was like, yeah. and I became I was like a true foot in your mouth moment. And just, you know, being a straight white man, I'm definitely not trying to make excuses for straight white men, but there are things that you just don't think about, that you have to work to think about. And that was a moment where I said, oh, David's gay. David must like all gay people, but David must represent, you know, and that's what I mean here is, I hate to act like I'm asking you to speak for all gay people, because I really do want you to speak to your experience. But I do think that for anybody of a certain group, that is an issue. You know, asking a black man to speak on the black experience recently we went through this election and there was a lot of talk about Latinx people, having them on to speak about that community. Like that, all communities are diverse. It's us that are singling that one thing out that identifies them and asking them to speak to that. So
yeah, that's still to this day is a pet peeve of mine. Which
it should be.
If it's a friend of mine, I'm just kind of like, water off a duck's back. I could care less, because there's also a degree of awe and kind of touch that you thought of me, but at the same time, like,
yeah, at the same time, like, why would I know the gay man in Chattanooga that you met at Starbucks? Because he's
right.
gay? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So going forward from high school, I mean, what was your high school experience like? Does anything stand out?
Well, and I don't know how I managed to stay in the closet. Like, most people, I guess, knew I just was in, full refusal. Like, if anybody, and I used to date some really attractive women, one of which I won't say any names, but it was like every time I went to her house, it was like vacation, because she had an in-ground swimming pool, a trampoline, a basketball court. Like, I truly cared about that person. I did, and still do. She's married now, so good for her. But I don't want to make it seem like I was using someone, but I to an extent, it felt like I had to. And at that point, like, I genuinely thought, I'm gonna have to marry a woman. Like I'm gonna have to die with this secret. So I tried to make something work out. But anyway, I used to date some very attractive women because, or girls really, because to me at the time they were women, of course, because we were kids. But, I danced like Beyonce. I learned the single ladies dance and performed it in front of the entire school. And no offense, but I killed that shit. And
I believe it 100%.
I don't know that I could still move like that today, but so most people pretty much knew. But like, I had enough people that I had convinced otherwise that they had my back, and like, one of the only bad things that happened to me was some rednecks like had started throwing quarters at me, and I was just like, y'all are dumb. I'm gonna buy a Snickers bar with this. I just started picking them up. I'm like, sure, this is tip money. Like,
shower me. No.
Yeah. Silver shower.
Yeah. A slightly painful shower, but I'm into it.
Yeah, it's fine. Like I said, I went and got food with it, so I didn't care.
So you said that you kind of came out to some people. What would have been your definition, or maybe even still now, of fully coming out? Like, what would that have looked like for you?
Well, and this is part of the struggle that I'm sure a lot of gay people can relate to, is that coming out is an ongoing process. Like, it's like every time you meet someone new, it's like you have to establish that it is how it feels.
Yeah.
I've been lucky to both work in a place that they genuinely do not like. It's not that they don't care, but like it doesn't affect, you know what I mean? So I got lucky with that. I've been blessed with a very fantastic friend group, several friend groups actually, who just, they look at me as a person first. So yeah, but it is kind of a struggle, because coming out is like something you feel like you have to do pretty often. But I remember when I first came out, and I don't mind to mention her name. If she sees this, she'll know it's funny, but her name's Deidre Hagler. She was like my college BFFFFFF. I would not have survived college if it were not for Deidre Ariel Hagler. But we were in the computer lab in the science building, the one in the basement. Do you remember? And I had logged on to Facebook, and this guy who I didn't know, of course, you didn't have like all these, well, you had dating apps, but they weren't huge, and I wasn't on any of them. I was just logging on to Facebook, and this guy had asked me if I wanted to go out for coffee. And I was kind of confused, because I wasn't out to anyone, but I guess he got that vibe from my pictures or whatever. So I was just like, oh, sure. And he was like, so is it a date? And he had sent that message, and before I could close out of it, Deidre just like looked over just to ask me a question or something, and she saw that, and she was like, are you gay? And I was like, bitch. So she was the very first person, and like I said, she got me through so much, especially when everything started kind of hitting the fan with family and stuff. But yeah, that was my first coming out. It was an accident, and I wonder to this day if I hadn't have just, continued on with the secret of me being gay, if I hadn't just stayed in the closet, if it weren't for that experience.
That like accident almost. It was like,
Yeah.
And with a friend that reacted well, I'm sure that helps.
Oh yeah.
Do you think that your life would have taken a different path if you had came out earlier?
Well, honestly, I don't know what would have happened, because when my parents found out about me, of course I was 18, so they had no responsibility necessarily. So it didn't matter if they kicked me out; the law couldn't get involved. But I mean, if they had found out before, I truly don't know. I mean, I was terrified of being homeless or something. As like, a 13-year-old, So I just didn't know what was going to happen, or if I was going to be sent to some kind of, like, I had read ghost stories, not even ghost stories because they're very real, but I had read horror stories about like conversion therapy and things like that. So, worst comes to worst, your parent sends you to a camp, there's not really anything you can do about it well, I think that's starting to change now, but as a kid, you can't really think about that. You're just thinking about like, I just want to have a place to sleep at night, and I just, like I said, I just want to keep the status quo. I don't want to make any waves or anything. So I truly don't know, and it gets kind of difficult to think about, because I don't know what would have happened to me if I would have ended up hurting myself if someone had have found out earlier. I truly don't know.
Well, and like, unless you're brought up very progressively, your parents are your rulers. I feel like, especially in more conservative Southern culture, you do exactly what your parents tell you to do. They make your decisions for you. Mm-hmm. And you can't escape that. So being a kid, which is pretty much what you were, you think, okay, well, if this comes out, whatever my parents want to do to me, that's what's going to happen to me.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how unrealistic it actually is. All those things are possibilities.
Yeah. And we fully believed in, spare the rod, spoil the child. We fully believed in, I can't remember the exact verbiage from the Bible, but it says something to the extent of rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. So it was like, if you don't do exactly what your parents say, you're basically a witch.
Yeah, and I'm writing that down because, I mean, that's just a general statement and almost a general attitude for how the South is,
Yeah.
Tradition is first, and if you get out of line, you're now the other, and why do you think you're better than me? Why do you think you're better than all this that we've established? And that really is the mindset regardless. So do you think that your parents would have done something like that? Do you think that was their outlook on it if they had found out earlier?
I don't think they would have sent me away to some place. I think they would have made me, because even when I was an adult and my parents had officially found out for like the second time, because we can go through the different coming outs here in a little bit, but like when I had officially come out, I remember my mother was like, well, do you just need to go see a therapist? And I was like, no, there's nothing wrong with me. So I fully believe, like, if I was a child, they would have forced me to go to therapy, even if it wasn't like anything damaging physically. I think it could have hurt me mentally and emotionally. But and I know for a fact it would have been no cell phone. You don't have a curfew. Like, you go to school and you come home, or you're in therapy. And like, I was really scared of that. Just being completely cut off from everyone,
Yeah. And to be clear, that probably would have been therapy because they thought that you were just confused or struggling with your identity, and probably didn't want you to go in that direction almost.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, and I want to present this to you and see what you think. I know I've had some very close experiences with young people deciding that they identify as gay and trying to come out with that. And I almost feel like, things are changing. And even the South is unable to avoid the progression of acceptability and, empathy and uplifting people that need to tell their story, no matter how young they are. But in this situation I'm thinking of specifically, the thought is, oh, they're too young. They're just confused. They're struggling. They don't really know. That's another thing. We talked about this coming up in shows and in pop culture. They say, well, that's not something they should be thinking about. But, we've just listened to some of your story, and it was something that was on your mind from a very early age.
Yeah.
So it seems like it is, because, sexuality is a part of who we are as humans. And it's really, if a kid is saying that they are having these thoughts and they're trying to figure this out for themselves, you should take them seriously, because they really are aware and cognizant of how they are feeling inside.
Yeah, kids are human beings. Like, they are human just like you are, and they, to a degree, understand what they're feeling. Sometimes they need help, trying to figure out what exactly that is, but kids know what they feel. You don't need to sway them one way or the other. They already know. Sometimes they don't have the understanding fully of, like, every aspect of it, or maybe they don't know exactly what to call it, but kids know how they feel. And anytime someone asks me, when did you know, it was like, since I can remember, I always call it, because you don't really know what attraction is as a child. So, like, when I was a kid, it was just like I had such a severe reverence, is what it felt like, for boys or men in my life. It almost felt like they were almost untouchable. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I felt, and still do to an extent, so much more comfortable around women, because I didn't have that level of attraction. Like, even when I'm around men, like, it's different,
Yeah.
But that's what I always called it as a kid, and I didn't know, what words to put with that, because I didn't fully understand it. But, and I know a lot of little gay boys who will also appreciate this, it's the underwear aisle in Walmart. That's when you're like, oh, I get it now.
What do you mean by that?
I'm telling all them, like, 6-pack men on them underwear packaging,
like,
pictures. You're like, oh.
That's awesome. And I don't really think that it should be, if I'm thinking about the straight community, it really shouldn't be that difficult to empathize with that. Because as a straight male kid, I grew up feeling more comfortable around men and feeling awkward towards women.
Yeah.
And, that's just something that's in you. Like, if you feel attracted to a different individual, and as a kid especially, you don't yet know how to process that, you're not confident with yourself, you don't understand it, it makes you feel awkward, and it makes you feel that reverence like you're talking about. And, and when a straight guy walks through the women's underwear aisle, he's like, oh shit, it's not, it's the same thing. It's just different. And I also wanted to mention that I really think when parents try to tell their kid who's trying to figure out this identity that maybe they're just confused, really what you're doing is trying to put your own doubts about the situation onto them.
Yeah.
And like you say, kids know what they want. You just have to be willing to be empathetic enough to understand that they just don't know how to verbalize it because they're a kid. That doesn't mean it's not valid.
Yeah. And I think I put this is kind of an offshoot, but what really helped me too was, and I think I put this on my introductory interview, was meeting Jeremy Gilbert.
Yeah.
Because he was the first openly gay grown individual that I knew from Teleco. And I'm not trying to put anybody on blast, whatever, but like, I accredit so much to him, and we never I was still in high school and he was in college, but I had him to look at and be like, I'm not just confused. Like, there are grown people who feel this way. You know what I mean? So that helped me out tremendously. Just to have somebody to, I always say he was like my big gay brother,
Yeah.
And like I was still in the closet. Like, we didn't discuss that at all. It's just that he was unapologetically himself, and it made me feel like, it's going to be okay. So, and like, I think a lot of gay people empathize with that too. Like, you will see someone as a kid just fully living their life to their best extent, and it gives you so much hope. And especially like if it's a gay person, like, and what was really damaging too was like any media that had a gay person in it that was open and proud, we were banned from, so that was really damaging. But you find those people in real life, just walking through the mall and you see a gay couple, like my parents might try to steer us the other way so I wouldn't see it, but I still did, and it still gave me that little bit of, so that's why I try, me myself, I'm not like extremely flamboyant. I don't think I am. Whatever, if I am, I don't really care, because I'm gonna act the way that I act, and if that gives some little kid hope that it can get better and you can grow up and be okay, then that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was processing what you were just saying, and it's so sad and honestly sick to think about the fact that somebody like Jeremy, right,
Mm-hmm.
that you met, can be one of the few mentors that you ever found in your early on in your life, to say this person is an adult, they're a fully functional human being, and they feel the way I do. The cynical people, maybe your parents, and just people that look down on homosexuality would say, "Oh, you need to stay away from that person because they're going to groom you to be gay."
Right.
Anything that people can find to say, "Oh, that's why."
Yeah.
It is what they will do, and it just is sad. And I hope that it's obvious in this conversation that that's not how it is. And I don't mean to harp on all those other people, all those naysayers, and the people that don't want to accept you, but first of all, fuck them. And second of all, I hope that this conversation can help some people realize that that's not the way it works. That's not what's going on for that person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I truly do not have harsh feelings toward anyone who does do that, because that's what we as humans do, is we want to make sense of something. And if it just doesn't make sense to us, we have to try and find something. And that's just human nature. So I don't begrudge anyone who does that. It's just, it is sad though that it's not more open and people don't feel like they're able to talk about it as openly. But we're getting there. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think that says so much about you knowing who you are and being confident in that and not caring about what anybody else thinks. But I'll say again, fuck you if you think that, and work on yourself. That's coming from the straight white guy. So you mentioned your different coming outs, and it seems like we've got to a point in the story where that's pretty relevant. Do you want to walk through those?
Oh, so like the different rounds with my parents. So, sure. And I just want to say, first and foremost, I still do not harbor any ill feelings toward either of my parents. And I'll talk about it as it comes about, and I might get a little emotional, just a heads up. But yeah, I want to be as transparent as possible, because when I got this invitation to this podcast, that was my first thought, was maybe someone will listen to this and either become educated, or maybe someone who's not out yet will listen to it and it will, give them a little bit of hope. So I want to be fully transparent with everything that happened. So the first time was my brother was dating his now wife, Maisie, and she had a gay cousin. Of course, I was out to Daniel, my brother. And so, of course, Maisie knew, and she was like, "Oh, I have a gay cousin. I should introduce y'all." So, we would hang out and do a few things together. Well, he was at my house one night. He was going to stay the night, and we weren't even doing anything. We were laying on the couch watching a movie, and I had dozed off. And we were not expecting our parents to be home because, like I said, at that time, they were transitioning to moving to Chattanooga. So we had the family house in Tellico that we grew up in that was basically given more or less to me and Daniel. And my dad had come home from Chattanooga unexpected. We did not expect him that night, obviously. And he just completely blew up. Like, I genuinely thought I was going to die that night. And I felt completely powerless. Like, I didn't have a car at the time, so it's like I couldn't go anywhere. But that was the first time that my brother really well, not the first time, but that was like the first significant time that my brother stood up for me. So much so that my dad ended up kicking both of us out.
Wow.
And I went to my best friend at the time, still very much I have several best friends, but she's like my lifelong best friend, Debbie. I had gone to her house because I didn't know where else to go. And we had gone to my grandmother's house to stay for a few days, my dad's mother. And she was okay with me staying there. But my parents didn't talk to me for several days. And I had gone back to the house to get some of my clothes and different things. And I thought to myself, I'm just going to go back into the closet. It's too much. So I more or less convinced my parents that I had become saved, which I thought I already was. And I still consider myself to be.
I was going to say you probably already were, but
yeah. But, I was like, I found God, blah, blah, blah. So we came back together as a family. And then my parents actually split up. They ended up getting a divorce. And it probably wasn't super fair of me to do this to Mom, but she was going through a lot. And I thought this might be my best shot with Mom, because I was still living with her for the most part. And I told her, I was like, "Mom, I'm still gay." And she was like, I could kind of see it. And I still feel bad for putting that on her at that specific time, because I could see just the tiredness. And she was just like, I can't deal with anything else right now. She was like, I love you no matter what. I've gotten to that point in my life, because the people who love me and care about me are all that I have, So she was like, whatever, pretty much. And then I just did not come out to my dad for a very, very long time. It was almost like just an unspoken thing. And then just very recently, I had, for the very first time in my life, put on Facebook that I was in a relationship with a man. And so that was my next coming out with my dad. And it didn't go so well. And I probably won't talk about it too much because it's still ongoing. And it's still kind of affecting the family. But like that first go around, it was really difficult because there was religion involved. Like my dad was still a pastor. So that, I say it was difficult, but it actually kind of made it a little bit easier, because that was my rationale, was like, oh, my parents are fearful for my immortal soul, So it's like, of course you want what's best for your kid. You don't want them to die and go to hell. But, and that they thought that that's what was going to happen. So, that part made sense. But now this second go around, it just doesn't make any sense, because neither one of them are super religious. And like Mom is super, I say they're not super religious. They're not religious at all really now. But like Mom has become very accepting of me, and she has stood up to gay people at her work. She'll stand up if someone says something inappropriate. She'll be like, "Excuse me, but my son's gay. You need to watch what you say." So she's gotten there. So go Mom. But now with like Dad, it's just, it's really tricky and difficult. And there's some other things that play into it. But yeah, it's like, I want to get to the point in my life where I can be gay and talk about it and not have to worry, but I still do. And like, I guess the message too, if someone younger is watching this, is, it's not, I don't know. It's an ongoing process, and it's not to say that things don't get better, because they do, but it's still, we're all still human, and we all still make mistakes, and we all still try to work through things to make sense for ourselves. But you just got to find those people. I've got those people in my life that I know support me and love me no matter what, and you just find them and you hold on to them.
Yeah, and I mean, I was thinking of a couple of different things that I wanted to say. It's just, the acceptance is something that I have a huge issue with, and I think, I probably have more of an issue with it at this point than you do, because I stand on the outside of it, and I wish that it would change so much. You were talking earlier about how your main concern with coming out as a younger person was just getting kicked out, losing a home, not having literally one of your basic needs, shelter or whatever. And that gives me the indication that those overwhelming emotional struggles were put on the back burner. The emotional trauma that was going to be endured from not being accepted, or from enduring all this, these differing viewpoints. It goes to show the situation that puts you in, and that it puts so many other people in, of like, me being honest with everyone about my identity is causing me to worry, first about just my general safety and well-being, and second about how this is going to affect me emotionally.
Yeah, and with me in particular, and this is just the type of person that I am, is I tend to worry about myself last. So for me, I mean, yeah, that was there, but the main thing for me was, I don't want to cause problems in my family. Like, I don't want, you know what I mean? So, but that's just me. That's just part of how I handle things.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it's worth saying that, like, you have a positive outlook, but it would be okay not to, because it's not a good thing. Nobody should be put in that situation, and so many people are every single day. And if you can have a positive attitude about it and try and make the most of it, then that's good. But if you struggle to, I think that's okay too. And it's so important to hear that it does get better,
Yeah. And like I said, we're all human. Everybody experiences a huge variety of emotions, so how you deal with things is how you deal with things, Some people deal with things through anger, some people deal with things through trying to be funny.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting how much fear has played into both sides of it. Fear is an extremely strong and reactionary emotion for all humans, and you felt an overwhelming amount of fear about coming out to your family and what that would mean and what would happen to you. But you also mentioned how real it was when your family was still extremely religious, about fearing for your immortal soul.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing that and thinking, okay, this is how my son identifies, but now that means that my son is literally going to go to hell. And that, I think I want to bring that back up, because I think that sounds crazy to some people, that aren't brought up in a religious household or from other religions. But like, if you're brought up good old fashioned Southern Baptist, and you're still really bought into that and accept that as your religion, then that is what you think. And it's completely fear-based, fearing for your soul and trying to grasp onto anything to undo it, because you don't want to have to face that.
Yeah. And by the way, we were not Southern Baptist. That was too liberal. That's how far we went. We were independent Baptist. Wow. Because we did not want to be part of any kind of convention, or we wanted to stand alone, our own. We didn't. Yeah. So, that's how Baptist we were. Was that Southern Baptists were too liberal.
Yeah, and I don't know that you can ever change that. But that mindset of being religious and thinking that a gay person is going to go to hell because of the way they identify, that is first of all very real for those people. They truly do believe that, regardless of whether we know it to be a shitty outlook for the individual who is trying to be in touch and be open about their identity. The people scrutinizing them like that really do believe that. And I think, that's just one of the many reasons why it's so important to advocate for gay rights and LGBTQ rights, because you can't change that from the individual person out. I think you have to change it from the larger picture in, and just try to make it more widely accepted and educate people about the fact that, you are talking about a human being. This is not some foreign concept that's, way off. Because I think that so many people, they don't concern themselves with LGBTQ rights, or they think that it's okay to joke about it and act like it's not a big deal when it's the other thing that you're not having to deal with. But as soon as a friend or a family member or a daughter or son come out in that way, oh, now it's important and we have to think about it. And, it's like, first there's denial and then there's bargaining, the stages of grief, and it takes a while for you to get to the place that it sounds like at least your mom is now, where she's accepted you. But it just, I guess I'm saying all this to say it just sucks that we still have to go through that,
Yeah. And it's almost like an occult mentality. Like, that's how it felt, was like, how did we allow something from the outside in? Like, and it was almost like my parents blamed themselves to an extent. It was what did we do? What did we expose him to?
Well, and something as simple as me going to school and forming my own political opinion and becoming what I consider to be a progressive and voting Democrat instead of being conservative and voting Republican. It was, what did we do wrong? Where did we go wrong? I heard a lot of, you've been brainwashed at that school, and it's just like so much of, this person is still our, I'm not going to give away the people that scrutinize me in that way, but this person is still a member of our family. How did we let that happen? Because they can't separate me from them. Your parents couldn't separate you from being their son, so it turns into that bargaining.
Yeah. And that's why things like this are so important. And like, really, that's why, I don't know if at any point we were going to have a section on Lady Gaga, but I'm probably going to segue into it right now, because I feel like she's extremely important to me, because, and it's like I said, it's things like this, it's things like anything that's, exposed to the general public to allow little kids to think, oh, I'm okay, because this person said so. I mean, and everybody does that. Straight people do that, like, you find birds of a feather flock together. I don't know, like, and for someone who's famous to say, hey, this is okay, it feels really good. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where the genius of Lady Gaga comes in. So at the extreme height of her popularity, like, she was already huge anyway, but she waited until she became like worldwide renowned. That's hard to say.
World renowned.
Thank you.
World Wide Web renowned.
Yeah. She waited until then to release Born This Way. And like, part of the genius is she didn't make the lyrics. She wrote the song to her fans, clearly. The back of the cover of the little booklet that you get with the actual physical CD. I know kids now won't know what those are, but you used to get little booklets, and on the back it had a big heart and it said, "This is for you." Like, she made that entire album for her fans. But she didn't say in the song Born This Way, she didn't say you were born this way. She said I was born this way, because she know we would all be singing along to it, and it becomes like a thing. Like, you keep saying I was born this way, I was born this way, because you're just singing along, but eventually it becomes like your mantra, and like, you finally start to believe it.
I never knew that about, and that that shows that she clearly put some thought into the framing of that song. Like she really wanted it to be for the fans that were singing along. That's so cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know that she's ever actually come out and said that. And if she ever come out and said that I'm doing it the wrong way, I'm perceiving it the wrong way, I don't care. Like, that's how I take it.
Yeah.
I enjoy it, and it helped me. And yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's the beauty of art is, it should be objective enough that you can find what you want in it. You can see what you want in it. And I'm sure we're going to talk about advocating for, you mentioned both gay rights and minority rights, but, and maybe we can transition into that now, but I think her doing that is such a huge example of using your platform and using your privilege to advocate for others that may not stand at that same level. And I just want to say that that also includes your privilege as, in my case, my privilege as a straight white male. We all have those privileges, and I really think that everybody should be an ally. And if I encourage you to look into that and try to be an ally and try to use your privilege to stand up for people, like your mom, something as simple as like what you said your mom does, standing in the line at Arby's or whatever and saying, hey, watch what you say right now, because I'm going to stand up for this person, and I'm not going to let that happen. It means so much. And obviously for a celebrity to use their, huge megaphone and their platform to stand up for that is huge as well. So, do you want to talk a little bit about minority rights and gay rights in general, and, what you would like to see, what you hope to do, and that kind of stuff?
Oh gosh. Well, sure. I have always been, ever since I first came out, I've always been huge for marriage equality. And, and it's things like, well, number one, marriage in America is legal. It's not religious. The ceremony, sure, that's religious, but that's the only aspect of it. And so there's no reason. And it's something simple as if I, back in the day before marriage equality was, was nationwide, if I had had a partner for 20 years and they were in a terrible car accident and were about to die in the hospital, I'm not their family. I can't go see them. It's something as simple and, well, not simple, but it's something as, that's base level. You know what I mean? And so people are like, well, what do you care? It's just a title. It's really not, because you're not considered that person's family. And for a very long time, and then still today, in some instances, gay people can't give blood, and it's that's another thing that kind of ties into the hypersexuality or hypersexualization of gay people. Because it's if you've had sex with a man, you're probably got AIDS. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and again, if your partner of however many years is dying and needs blood, you couldn't give it to them. I mean, it's just, and it's those simple ground level basic rights that every person should have. I don't care about the religious aspect of it. I care about, the livelihood of the person that is my lifelong partner.
Yeah. And, usually it's the other that is trying to make those decisions for the group. It's the people that identify as straight and, sadly to say, usually straight white men saying, oh, well, it's, marriage is a religious ceremony and it's just not accepted, so we can't do that. Or in this most recent case that's kind of been in the spotlight, trans people can't serve in the military. What, you're telling me that a trans individual can't go risk their life and possibly die for the freedoms of this country? Once again, focusing only on their sexuality, how does that change their ability to go into combat for the country that they love? You are making it about something that it shouldn't be about.
Yeah, and it's also those people that you got to watch out for, because they really let you know where their priorities lie. Because it's it also seems to be those same people that are so pro-military and pro-police, or which, not speaking bad on anyone necessarily, but it's like, I thought you wanted people to serve in the military. Like, why are you trying to bar a specific type of person? So it lets you know, like, that is top, and then like everything else is below.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be. Who cares if you're not hurting someone? It shouldn't matter.
Exactly. It's not a fact. It wouldn't be a factor if somebody didn't make it a factor.
Yeah.
It in no way affects the ceremony of marriage. It in no way affects you serving in the military. It only becomes a thing when you make it a thing. But the culture wars are the war of our times, unfortunately, and anything that can be done to make somebody the other and start focusing more on that identity, that piece of their identity that makes them the other, and how that should make them ineligible for this thing or that thing, or to continue to be otherized, is, it's definitely it's a political tactic, and it really sucks. Well, we've talked about a lot.
We have.
Do you want to talk a little bit about present day David, what you're doing, what your future hopes and dreams are, goals, where you see yourself?
Oh gosh. Well, I know I mentioned earlier, I have been blessed with a very awesome workplace, and I love everyone that I work with. I love the company that I work for. I think they treat people really well. So I would love, honestly, to stay with them and go up in that company. And that just kind of is my type of personality. I worked for Kmart for 6 fucking years. So, and like,
best years of my life.
Yeah. Thank you. But it was like, that's what I always used to tell people in interviews was, I'd be like, listen, I'm loyal. I worked for Kmart for 6 years.
Yeah. You literally closed the bitch down. So
I did. Man, we should talk about that some here in a minute. But like, so yeah, I mean, as it stands right now, I've been in talks with my manager about getting into leadership with the company, and maybe even getting some involvement in the chamber for McMinn County, because she does a lot with that, which right now with COVID, it is really difficult, but trying to find ways around that. So yeah, I would love to see McMinn County grow. And that's another thing that we kind of glossed over, back again with the triangle, gay, Southern, and Christian.
Almost forgot.
My bad. But like Southern, like, I've fully embraced. I used to use that as like, or I used to say, I don't want to be considered Southern. I hated my accent. I did everything I could to try and keep from sounding like I was from the South. I hated country music, still do. But for the most part, I have embraced that is part of my identity. And it almost is kind of like, yeah, I'm gay and Southern. And what?
Yeah.
Deal.
Well, I think I remember asking you, like, if you would ever move out to California or something like that, and you said, honestly, I kind of like it here, and that surprised me.
Yeah, it's just this is my home, and I mean, I've traveled a lot, and I love traveling. I love seeing different places, but this, as it stands right now, this will forever be my home. And if I can get into the community more and try and make a bit of a difference, then that's what I'm going to do. So. And I don't know if this was around the time that you were still in college with me, but I had turned around and was trying to get my teaching degree. So I was going to do that. But public schools, it seems it's very political. It's more about and not trying to bash anyone. It just that I was fearful for what my career would look like. But that's mainly on me, and I might pursue that later on. But that was going to be how I made a difference, was to try and be that figure in school to kids that may not have someone else to look at. But like I said, maybe in the future, actually with COVID, like schools going virtual, that actually sounds like a dream.
Yeah.
I know some people don't like that, but you know, that's
Well,
something that I might look into.
and you know, with everything going virtual, I was just reading about somebody who during COVID started running Dungeons and Dragons classes. And this is something that I'm doing right now for the Napa County Office of Education, and they're paying me, and I'm basically like a camp counselor, like an after school counselor, which is super cool. But like this person literally got laid off, found this, and made it a career. She was running 40 games a week and
Good
making.
Lord.
Now she was working 12-hour days, 7 days a week, but she was making over $100,000.
Wow.
So and it was on this website that the whole website is you virtually teaching a class, and kids pay or parents pay for their kids per kid. So there's been some cool things that have come out of COVID and that have been popularized because of the COVID situation. So. Yeah. I just say that to say that if, teaching at good old McMinn County High School and all the politics and the small town politics and crap that go on there is unattractive, there are opportunities to like really make an impact and reach out to some even larger than Athens, Tennessee, and do that, and also make hella money. So
yeah, I came super close to being like a tutor for kids in Japan.
Yeah.
And I ended up, for whatever reason, ended up not doing that, but it's still something that I might consider doing.
I have a friend from America in AmeriCorps that did that. He did that program, and he lived in a small village in Japan and taught English to Japanese kids. So freaking cool. He has such awesome. Cool stories.
Yeah. And I know I didn't talk about nerding out about this, but it is pretty high up there is the English language. Like, it's so convoluted and stupid, and I love it.
Yeah.
Like, that's what my degree was in, and I love literature, and I love, every once in a while, if we're slow at work, I'll be like, quick, name the 7 parts of speech, and everybody's like, no one knows that but you. But I'm just like, but it's so much fun.
Well, it's clearly something that you're passionate about if you can just like come off the cuff with that stuff too.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that says that you would be a very good teacher.
Right. Pop quiz. 7 parts of speech.
David Johnson special. Well, do you want to talk about Kmart a little bit?
Oh gosh. Well, like, I know we talked about like I helped close the doors, and I did. That was
probably
really
literally.
difficult. Well, I tried to, and do you know what it was? It was the end of the day. Everything was gone, and I had gone back to the office for some reason, get a walkie-talkie or something. And Tammy was back there, and she said, well, I guess this is goodbye. And I said, nope, can't do it. I said, I refuse to say it. I refuse to stay here. I gotta go. I gotta break down. Couldn't do it. And I left, and I just, because I was like, I can't stand around and give hugs. And I was like, I will be a puddle of tears. Because that place was a very difficult place to work for. Like, you barely made any money. Like, the hours were awful, but like, I loved every person that worked there in one way or another.
Yeah, honestly, some of my fondest memories in a workplace are there, and I've not really been able to compartmentalize why that is, and maybe it was just the good people.
Yeah, the managers cared about you. I remember someone who worked there who was kind of like your she did the front end lead while you were the, I don't want to say any names because I don't want to talk about family stuff about her. But anyway, I remember her mother had been admitted to the hospital, I think for drug abuse or something. And she was at the point in her life where she was just like, what, I don't care anymore. But she came up to Tammy, and she was like, again, Tammy. And she was like, I just want to tell you that this is happening just in case. And Tammy was like, no, you need to go. Like, you need to, even if you don't go see her, because I know your situation, just, you don't need to be here working. That's ridiculous. You know what I mean? So it was like, they genuinely cared about, their workers.
Yeah, shout out to Tammy and Tim, because Tammy is awesome. One of the sweetest people that I've ever met. I still get
Yes.
so excited. Well, when I was still in Athens, just like you see her in Lowe's or you see her out, you're like, God, Tammy, like, hey.
Yes.
Like
She
it's,
was on a date at Gondolier the other day, I want you to know. And I was just
oh,
like,
get
go,
it,
Tam.
Tammy, get it. But Tim too. I mean, that man gave
Yeah.
himself 4 heart attacks because he was doing stuff like that. Because if somebody had a problem, you go take
Yeah.
care of that. I got this. I can do the
Yeah.
job of 5 people. I won't stop moving. I mean, it really sucked when he left because he was intense. He had high expectations, but he would work just as hard and usually outwork you. He was a really good manager.
Oh, yeah. Do you know he hit and totaled his car, hit 2 deer within like a week?
Oh, my God.
Because he used to drive to Chattanooga, remember?
Yeah.
Or drove from Chattanooga to Athens to manage a Kmart and came home one night and it was dark, of course, and hit a deer, totaled his car, got a rental, insurance paid for it and everything. And then not 2 weeks later, totaled that because he hit another deer.
God, those Tennessee deer, man. They
Fearless.
Fearless, yeah, no kidding. They're stupid.
Yeah, one or the other.
But yeah, shout out to Tim and Tammy. And I mean, there's so many other names we could mention because there was, that job really taught me that the people that seem rude and that have high expectations and are not going to take any shit or whatever can also be the people that you come to appreciate the most.
Yeah.
Because there was a couple people there that they were always rude and they were always hateful. But if you did what they needed you to do and you took care of your shit and you came in and act like an employee and not like a slouch, then they respected that. And I mean, I guess it really is saying more about not necessarily them being rude, but people that you have to earn their respect. It taught me a lot about those kind of people and made me really value that a lot.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. One of my fondest memories was, I can't remember, did you work with Christian Wade?
I don't think I did.
That boy, I'm telling you, he was, if I am what I am that you said I was to like you and Nathan, that's what Christian was to me. Like if I walked in and grabbed that schedule off the service desk and looked and it said Christian, it was a good night, But I had gone back to the Baylor one night and, well, has my memory betrayed me? I think it was Christian, had built like a transformer suit out of boxes. And was just like, looked over at me. It was just like, hey, I was like, I don't even care that I'm having to pick up your slack for not working at that point. Like,
this was worth it.
Yeah. I come back here prepared to be mad, and then I saw this.
That's awesome. So what is that's a pretty good one, but what sticks out in your mind is like your favorite Kmart story?
Oh gosh, so many. One of the funniest ones was we were this is a Tim story. It was during the holidays, so he had hired a bunch of just temporary, holiday employees. And I had come back there to tell him something had happened. And I was like, hey, this person did this. What do we need to do? And he was like, which one is he? I said, the tall one. He goes, that doesn't narrow it down. And I said, smokes weed all the time. And he goes, that doesn't narrow it down.
True.
What about you?
Yeah, I was just thinking about my own question. I think that I'm not going to say anybody's name because I don't want to make anybody feel bad, but the story that many people in our friend group know that will always be my favorite is when we were unloading the truck and doing it with, of course you do it with other people, and I remember there was this big stack that was like about to fall. And usually that was pretty much how it was most of the time. There's a
Yeah.
freaking stack of Arm& Hammer detergent that's double boxed in reinforced boxes, and it's always about to fall over. That's just how.
Oh yeah.
And I remember I walked up and I was going to try to do it easily because, some people would just be like, and just watch the shit fall. But, I was the good guy, so I was going to try not to. Anyways, I reach up and I'm getting this thing. And this guy we're working with, he comes up behind me and he gently touches my shoulder. And he puts his other hand under my arm so softly. And he says, "Lord, don't hurt yourself." And it was just like he was here saying like almost like a careless whisper on the back of my neck, and I was just like okay.
It was probably more of a hazard than just not saying anything.
Yeah, it broke my concentration full on. But I mean, he was genuinely trying to be helpful, so I can't give him too much shit. But
that became such a staple, that saying in our friend group. Like it's one of those that it's never going to go away.
No, it's never going to go away because it was so awkward for me at the time because I wasn't expecting it. I don't even know that he was in the truck when I first walked over there. And he just so quickly came up behind me and just like gently touched me. Lord, don't hurt yourself. But so many good memories in that place, and it makes me nostalgic, because I think the whole time that I was working there, that just the Kmart format was already like dying. We had lost Blockbuster, I think, and there was so much. It just reminded me of my childhood so much. So to be able to go back to electronics and see all the TVs on, and to be able to, even know that there was a lawn and garden section, or putting up the special tags, like doing the ad at 5:00 in the morning.
Oh Lord!
Like I guess you can get the same thing at Walmart, but Walmart is like this other giant that's never going to go away, and it felt so nostalgic while I was working there.
Oh yeah. Do you remember we had a stationery area? I forgot.
Yeah. Well, and we also had like a hunting and fishing area. And
we sure did.
Yeah.
I used to sell those licenses, and I would just open up the book and hand it to them and be like, pick out, I don't know, like, and they were like, well, we don't know what we need. I'm like, I don't either.
You're looking at the wrong guy. Okay,
I was like, pick what you want.
Do you remember everything that was layaway?
Listen, okay, I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second.
Got to adjust those pants.
Let me tell you, I was very proud of layaway when I ran it because I had that thing under control. We didn't lose nothing. Everything was done in a timely and organized manner. And I trained pretty much every single night shift worker to work layaway. Like that was me. I was the trainer for layaway. And then I got customer service. And I'll never forget, there was one night, it was 9, doors were locked, and everyone was out of the store except for this couple in layaway. And I come across the thing and I called back there and I said, I need your money back. And they were like, well, we've lost layaway. So here I go. I go back there, and I had never seen it in such disarray that with customers standing there, I kind of feel bad about this. I let them boys have it. I said, never in my 6 years has it looked this shitty. I was just so disappointed.
It's amazing how quickly that can happen too. Like layaway could go to shit in about 2 days.
Oh yeah. If you were not diligent, it was gonna happen.
Yeah, but all it was like a receipt stapled to a product. Like that was how your product was tied in. Because UPCs sure were tied in, but there's 50 of those things in the store, and if that floats off somewhere and gets sold, we don't have it anymore,
Yeah. Don't have it. Yep. And this was, I actually forgot about this too. You mentioned the little labels, but this happened in that same instance. I had found one of the boxes just by happenstance because someone had just taken receipt paper and written in pencil the number, and then wrote like, I don't even remember what I was seeing red at that point. I was like, you can't be, when you print a ticket, it registers it in the system. You can't just handwrite something and slap it on there and expect us to find it. Oh, that was great. That was a great night.
It was always hard when you were trying to take the job seriously, and so many other people around you were not.
Yeah.
Because if you were in any kind of leadership position, you were the one that was going to get fucking yelled at by the people that were pissed.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember that happening in customer service, and it particularly pissed me off when it would happen to you because you were my friend, so I took it more personally. I mean, I remember like I got to like the point of fuck it where if there was somebody up there that was like, I'm going to stand right here until you give me my money back. And I would be like, all right, bitch, well, I'm going to call Athens Police Department, and they're going to come escort you out because I don't have the time or the patience to deal with your ass. And I say she because I'm specifically remembering a time where this woman was not going to leave. And we had the doors locked, the lights were down. We did everything we could to get her to get the idea that, one, this is not going to happen, and two, you're going to have to leave. And she was, I remember I went back to the back, called the police department, and came back up, and she just kept going on and on and on, let me have it. You were there, you may remember this. And she was like standing at the customer service counter, both hands on it, still going off, when the police officer came up behind her and like tapped her on the shoulder. And I hate to be, that guy, but that was a good feeling because I was like,
oh yeah,
we've been here for forever. We've been dealing with people close to like you all day, especially David. We want to fucking leave.
Yeah. It's like, I got an essay to write that's due tomorrow.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, and what was tricky too was when you were running the customer service desk, you were basically responsible for all the cashiers. And who applies to be a cashier at Kmart? Like high school girls, obviously. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was like I had to have that like mama bear mentality to some degree. Like I had to have this talk with every single one of them when they were new. I was like, if someone even makes you uncomfortable, come tell me. It's like, it doesn't have to be anything big. I can just bring them over and check them out instead of you doing it, but like you always had to kind of be on the lookout.
Which is so admirable because working customer service, you had absolutely no reason to have any patience left within your soul, because all this customer services did was suck every bit of empathy and patience out of you.
Oh, yeah. But that's what I'm good at, so that's...
Just smile and wave.
Yeah, God cursed me with that for whatever reason.
Well, it's been an awesome conversation, David. I miss you tremendously. I miss our get-togethers and our parties up at 1609 and
1609.
Our trips to Zaxby's and all the other places we used to go to.
Waffle House.
God, Waffle House, dude. I tell people here about Waffle House all the time. I'm like, don't even bring up Denny's, okay? I don't want to hear about it. It's not Waffle House.
They don't have Waffle House over there?
They don't have Waffle House west of, like, New Mexico. There's, like, one in New Mexico, and there's none beyond that. Okay,
no offense, but California was a mistake. How are you not gonna have a Waffle House? I thought they were everywhere.
Me too. I thought they were everywhere until I was alone living out here, and I was like, hang on, can I still change my mind? Is there a way to phone a friend? have I dug the hole too deep at this point? Because there's no Zaxby's, and there is no Waffle House. There's also not a lot of sweet tea, to be fair, and I have a problem with all three of those things.
Yeah, you got to brew your own.
I know, got to brew my own. Any final thoughts, David?
Part of me feels like the majority of this conversation, what's been going on in my brain is just like the screensaver that pops up on your TV that just bounces around. So if you enjoyed this and if everybody else enjoyed this, I'm happy. I'm glad. I don't remember a single thing that I said at this point. So
well, I remember you saying a lot of awesome stuff. And I will say, you know, for the sake of the building of this podcast empire, please like and subscribe and share. But if you think that David's story and his conversation can help someone, please share it specifically with them, not just sharing it to share it. Share it with them so that they can be uplifted and more confident in themselves. And that kind of leads me to the last thing I wanted to ask you, David, is looking back, like, what advice would you give your younger self?
That was an extremely difficult question to think about on your form, and one that I had forgotten about, because probably the advice I would give myself is, and I think I've already said this once, was just find those people who care about you and cling to them, because no one else matters. You know, you're going to go through a lot. It's inevitable, but everyone does. So try and keep a soft heart. You know, don't let it affect you, because you know, and I know we've said this, I do try to be a light, and I try to bring joy to as many people as I can. So just lean into that. Maybe pursue a career as a comedian.
You should do that. But I mean, I think that translates so well to absolutely everyone, you know, regardless of how you identify who you are, what you're doing. If people are bringing negativity into your life and putting you down, number one, that's more of a reflection of them than it is of you. And number two, absolutely no one is saying you need to have those people in your life. And, you know, if you're underage, then that does complicate things. And I think that makes it even more important to cling on to those people that support you and love you no matter what. And then, you know, once you're not in the house with them anymore, there is no reason, you know, at least to prioritize them and the way that they think in your life. Because I'm not going to advocate for anybody turning their back on their parents or their family, because I've been through my trials and tribulations, you know, mostly political with my family. And I've came to the conclusion that I do want to have those family members in my life. But that doesn't mean that I have to prioritize their opinions that I think are damaging to my identity and how I want to live my life. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Oh, and one other thing that I would tell my younger self, I would probably grab my 5-6-year-old self by the shoulders and shake him real hard and say, do not fight with your brother. He's going to be your biggest life support ever. Stop being mean to him. Because I was scrawny, so I couldn't really bully him. But I actually had this conversation with him the other day. I was like, what I couldn't do physically, I did mentally, and I feel so bad about it. You know, just quit, get along with him. Sometimes it's all you got.
Yeah. So David Johnson's advice is keep the people that love you close and be nice to your siblings, because one day you're going to need them no matter what.
Yes.
All right, David. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a great conversation. I knew it would be. Thank you just for being so vulnerable and for talking about some of this hard stuff. And thank you for your patience with me. You know, I wanted this to feel like a conversation, but I knew we were going to talk about some heavy stuff. So just thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. And if you ever want to have me on again, I'm not opposed.
Well,
you might have made me a fan of podcasts.
Ooh.
Maybe. We'll see.
Maybe, yeah. Well, you know, I challenge you to go back and listen to this all the way through, because the real test is listening to yourself and trying to get it out of your mind how stupid you sound the whole time you listen. Not that you sounded stupid, but my own critiques of myself. I'm like, God, I sound like an idiot. Why did I say this and that?
Well, like I said, I've already forgotten everything. So me listening back to it's going to be my first time listening to it.
You're like, wow, I was there, wasn't I?
Yeah.
It's like an out-of-body experience.
That's the danger with recording things, is you can't deny it anymore. There it is.
Yeah, well, you know, you think that until you get into some recent politics, but anyways. Well, I will definitely be having you on again if you're willing. So,
Absolutely.
all right.
Again, thank you so much.
Thanks, David. It's been great talking to you.
You too.
See ya.
Bye.